Hello everyone, and welcome to this new tutorial by MKS Tech. Today, we're going to explore another interesting tool of BEAM that is called Ray that allows us to select and export multiple elements and geometry from your Revit model to your Rhino file. After you install BEAM in your computer in Revit, this will be visible in the top ribbon under BEAM. Let's start with Ray. As you can see, here I have the possibility of selecting edges, grids and curves, solid elements, adaptive components, parameters and materials. And for the first four, also I can export in them with an internal origin location or shared coordinates. Now for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to use the Revit, let's say, standard project that we all know. And now I want to select the edges and import them into Rhino. So after selecting edges and beam, I can now select using a multiple selection or a single selection. So let's say I want to select this edge and this one and this one, and let's say these two. And then after clicking on finish, now I can save my file as edges. If we go now in Rhino, as you can see, make sure you visualize the beam property window here in Rhino by going into options and then clicking on beam. What we have to do is to click on Ray, and then as you can see, the latest file that we export from Revit will be always visible as a first option in the drop-down menu in a chronological order. And then by beaming this file, as you can see, now my edges are imported with a specific mark. Let's go now back into Revit, and let's say I want to use this blend view of the standard project to basically export grids and curves. So by selecting the grids and curves and then beam, now I can select multiple curves or grids at the same time, and then by hitting finish, I want to save my file as grids and then beam again. Let's go back into Rhino and then Ray. Now grids is visible as a first option, and let's beam it. As you can see, my grids are now imported as curves. If we go on layer, grids are also placed in a specific layer that we can turn on and off accordingly. Let's go back into Revit. Let's have a look at the next tool, which is basically selecting solid elements. Beam again, and now I can easily select all the solid elements that are in my Revit project. So let's say I want to select this object, and let's hit finish. I want to call this file solid solids. Completed. Now if you go on Rhino again and then beam, solid is placed at the top. And now as you can see, if we go on shaded view, we imported our solid geometries. The interesting thing about Ray is that it also keeps the same type of layer, let's say in this case subdivision, according to the family name. So roofs, walls, and floors, as well as the materials of the specific solid elements. So in case we go on the render view, and then under materials here in Rhino, as we can see, we imported the same exact materials from Revit that are applied to these solid elements. Let's go, for instance, into this different project which is basically related to a section of a roof they populated using adaptive families. And back on Ray, let's say I want to export adaptive components. By clicking on Beam, I have the possibility of selecting specific ones or multiple ones, and then finish. I want to save this file as adaptive. And then this is complete. As you can see, I placed these cables using 2 insert points. So what I'm expecting to see in Rhino is basically a curve that has 2 points. So this is what happened. We basically imported in Rhino our curves that are basically related to the location, to our adaptive cable. Under set, we also kept the same type of family name, which is cable, and a specific mark. Let's say I also want to make some design changes. So for instance, I lost, let's say, the main Rhino file. So I can re-import, in this case, like the curves. I can make all my design, let's say, changes, for instance, like this. And now I'm able to re-import these curves. I'm going to call them adaptive, let's say 01. And back into Revit, now I'm able to re-update my geometry. In this case, I'm going to use Ursa. So we can go, let's say, back and forth between the 2 softwares to enable, this continuous interoperability between the softwares. And this helps, let's say, our design in case changes. As you can see, we updated now the geometry. And the last tool that we're going to check, it's basically adaptive components. Parameters and materials. So if you click on Beam, now we have the possibility of selecting some specific materials that are already existing in my Revit documents. So in this case, I have all these materials that I can import into Rhino and assign them, let's say, to a geometry that I modeled in Rhino. So let's say I want to export, bricks and concrete. I also want to export earth and asphalt. And by hitting OK and saving this file as materials, back into Rhino, and then under Ray, now I can import these materials. So the same window appears. So let's click on materials. So I can basically import some specific ones or all of them. So let's say I want to import all of them. And after hitting OK, now my material list is updated with this latest one that I imported. So as you can see, I have earth and asphalt. So let's say in case I want to update, let's say this geometry with a new material, with Beam, I can just go on material and then applying the same type of Revit material and then beam it again. That's it for today, and thank you for watching.